grew up with 10 people living in a 3-bedroom trailer. We didn't have a lot of food to eat at times. We'd have to eat mayonnaise sandwiches, syrup sandwiches. All these parts and stuff, my uncles, we used to all look through this to try to sell and try to make money. We didn't have a lot of conveniences because we lived outside of the city limits. And I think that here is where my heart for community started. And it was just in the simple sense of all of us working together, growing together, living together, and doing all the work that was required. And I think that as I evolved to more financial sufficiency, I think that it was easier for me to look back and have a passion for other people who were in those same conditions to say, you know what, how can I be a part of building a better and stronger community around people, and maybe they can make the leap that I was able to make. We play football. I mean, it looks small now, but when you was a kid, it was big. It was on the sports field, on the football field itself, that the racial barriers were dropped, because I lived in the segregated South. You know, in high school, I was playing football, and I was heavily recruited. You know, I was one of the top recruits in the state of Texas. I could have went to any Division I college that I wanted to go to.
Damon Dunn at the 10.
And so I chose to go to Stanford University because I felt like it gave me the best opportunity to be successful. Even if football didn't work out, it was the best choice, you know, that I've ever made in my life. And I was surrounded by kids that wanted to be senators and Supreme Court justices and president of the United States, and it caused my ambition to grow. And that was one of the single most important lessons I learned at Stanford. Whatever it is that you can conceive, if you're willing to work hard enough, you can achieve it.
Looking at him, it kind of sets the expectation, or it breaks through a lot of the stereotypes that, you know, African American or Hispanic students are not able to go on to college, and he was able to break that.
When he rolled out of the NFL and he was ready to start his business career, his idea of starting was not going to work for somebody else. It was starting his own company, and they started basically from scratch.
When I was 12 years old, I was a class clown. And one day my teacher had enough of it, and she put me out of the classroom. And I remember sitting in the hallway, and a janitor walked by, and he told me, he said, look into that classroom. I looked in there, and he said, well, what do you see? And I didn't say anything because I was embarrassed. And he said, what I see in there are a bunch of kids learning how to be your boss. And that hit me so deep to my core. At that point, I started to start setting higher expectations for myself. I said, I'm never going to get kicked out of the classroom again. I said, I'm going to start making good grades because I'm not going to let anybody else be my boss.
They went out and did it, and they did it across several states in a big way with major corporations, and built up a successful empire that it'd be impressive for anybody in their entire life to have a career that successful, and to do it at his age in that amount of time frame is almost unheard of in the industry that we're in.
Today I want to talk to you about finishing the race.
Damon's first sermon was "Finish the Race," and it really goes with him, because anything Damon starts, he's gonna finish.
Anyone who would take the time, coming from California, to come and inspire kids, to me, that's amazing.
He's always been taught to give. The more you give, the more you receive. And so Damon's always been a giver, and that's one of the qualities that I admire in him, because he blesses others. And we often talk about you can feed a man for a day, but if you teach him how to fish, you feed him for life. And so that is a quality that he instills in everyone around him.
If one person is suffering in my community, if one person is dealing with an injustice in my community, if one person is dealing with education challenges, then that diminishes me. And I am inextricably woven together with their sense of purpose and their destiny. And so I feel compelled, I feel obligated to go help and to go share. So I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at the rate of growth of success over time in my life. And what we're going to find here on this second slide is that there's a period in my life where the growth of success was pretty flat. So the growth of success over time, I was not accomplishing a lot at that time. And that's probably the period of time where my mom had me at 16. My father was killed when I was 3. Then my mom left me with my grandparents. I ended up growing up in that trailer and living with 10 people, and I slept with 2 uncles for the first 10 years of my life and watched both of them go to prison, one for murder, one for armed robbery, and then I lost 3 of my closest friends to murder by the time I was 16. And then what we're going to find is that there's another period of time in my life as things progress where the rate of growth over success over time really accelerates. There's this explosive period. Now I'm a junior, senior in high school. I'm a 4.0 student. I'm recruited by pretty much every college in the country to go play football. I go to Stanford University. I'm academic all Pac-10. I'm first team all Pac-10. I had great mentors when I was at Stanford, and I was able to go on at that point to start my own business after I played in the NFL. So a lot of success, and the acceleration was incredibly fast. And I think what's interesting is that there's this inflection point that's created. And I really want to spend some time today talking about what allowed my life, right, to be able to transition from this slow growth of success to this explosive growth of success. And then also, why is it that my peers, the people that I grew up with in my neighborhood, were not able to access the same outcomes? And I think the most illuminating point here is that my expectations changed. I started to develop prodigious expectations. And if you contrast that with my peers, what you're going to find is that it wasn't that they had zero expectations or that they had no expectations. It's that they had low expectations and then they met them. But my expectations started to grow, and I would be what Norman Vincent Peale would say is a possibilitarian. I started to look beyond the plausible outcomes based upon my socioeconomic status and the people that were surrounding me, looking beyond the probable outcomes and being able to see what was possible. And a lot of people in my community, they could not do that. So how did prodigious expectations create this inflection point in my life? I think it'd be interesting to look at some science behind this. There's some really fascinating research done in psychology and behavioral economics, particularly by a guy by the name of Daniel Kahneman. He's a Nobel Prize winning psychologist and economist, and he wrote a book called Think Fast, Think Slow. And Kahneman suggests that our brain uses two systems to make decisions. System one is fast, it's intuitive, it's quick, it's more subconscious. It's the part of the brain that's engaged when you hear a male voice say that I'm pregnant. And within 200 milliseconds, your brain has already determined that there's something wrong. And it seems automatic, but in reality, what's happened, your brain has made several calculations. It's conglomerated certain information about voice tonality and about biology. System two is slower, it's more deliberate, it's more conscious. It's the logical part of our brain that we engage when someone asks us to multiply 14 times 27. Or they say, give us the alphabet backwards from Z to A. And Kahneman suggests that we spend most of our lives making decisions in system one. And system one primarily operates under what's called associative memory. So there's these ideas that are laying around in your head, and then you hear certain things, and then your brain makes decisions based upon the association of different things going on in your mind. So here's an example. If I ask you, what's 2 plus 2? Many of you are going to say 4. Not because you calculated it, but because you associate 2 plus 2 with 4. That's your associative memory. Now, the fallacy in the associative memory is that it's prone to jump into conclusions because it ignores information that it doesn't have. It can create cause and effect relationships that do not exist. So it's prone to making mistakes. Here's a great example. So let's take someone from my neighborhood, grows up their entire life, and they hear that you cannot be successful if you're poor. That's just what they're taught. Then they go on in life and they give their very best effort in some project at school or their best effort in some sport or some job, and then they fail. And their brain is likely to infer that that's just par for the course for poor people. That's just the way that it is. But in reality, it was just a setback. It was just a learning opportunity. But because their system one was primed to believe that poor people can't succeed, it confirms the ideas that are laying around in their head. Then this vicious cycle begins, where people have these ideas that the cards are stacked against them and they can't succeed. And then their minds spend their entire life confirming those very thoughts that they have inside of their head. So I think if we want to understand the inflection point in my life, I think we have to understand what were the ideas that were laying around in my head and how was my system one shaped? Well, in the first season of my life, my system one was primarily shaped by my mom. My mom left me with my grandparents when I was 3. She came back and got me when I was 11 years old. And my mom would tell me, son, God is going to use you to do great things. She would tell me that education is your golden ticket. It's your way up and your way out to a new life. Education is your way out of this community. Education is your way to the career you wanted. With a good education, you can buy the house that you wanted and live in the community you want and be able to provide for your family. So she associated education with success. And I'd put a bookmark there, and I would encourage all the parents and future parents here, be careful what you say to your children. Because life and death is in the power of the tongue. If you speak thoughts, you bring them to life. So if you tell your kids that they're not good enough, or they're not smart enough, or they're not pretty enough, or they're too big, or they're too small, or they can't achieve, they are vulnerable and they are impressionable. And these things will impact their self-esteem and what they believe they can achieve. In the second season of my life, my environment shaped my System 1. So I went to this radical environment at Stanford University. It was a place where failure was not looked upon negatively. As a matter of fact, failure was embraced. It was just a part of the journey to success. And people wanted to fail fast. Let's fail as fast as we possibly can so that we can get to success as quick as we can. They wanted to fail forward, right? Let's learn from what we went through, build on those things that were good, set aside those things that were not. It was a radical environment. The third season of my life, which I'm in now and probably started sometime after I left Stanford, I started to utilize my System 2, my more logical, deliberate, conscious part of my brain, to shape my own System 1. So I chose what books I wanted to read, what ideas I wanted to be exposed to, what environments I wanted to be in, what people that I wanted in my life. And I know there's a lot of psychology and self-help books and success books that would tell you that if you can just shape your System 2, most of these books are centered on System 2 type of thinking, then you can change your life. And I'm telling you that you can't. You have to go through the hard, long, difficult process of reseeding your System 1. So let's recap. If you consider and contemplate your System 1, the more fast, intuitive, quick, subconscious part of your brain, as fertile soil, and you seed that soil with prodigious expectations, then you will have the opportunity to reap the harvest of inflection points in your life. But it will be through the deliberate and through the conscious and through the consistent effort of changing your System 1, improving the way you think on a subconscious level so that you can make better decisions. So I'm going to leave you with some good news and some bad news about the life you've always wanted. The good news about the life you've always wanted is that it's waiting on you. The bad news about the life you've always wanted is waiting on you. Thank you.